Hello everyone, welcome to Chinatown Gang Stories. Today I have a special guest and his name is Michael Lau. He was a former commanding officer of the 5th Precinct in New York City's Chinatown, and I'm very happy to have him here to share some of his stories, and there's plenty of stories to share. So let's get started. Mike?
Well, thanks for inviting me, Mike. I guess I had to come on because you guys keep mentioning my name on the show, and I keep getting calls from different people saying that, hey, they're talking about you again. So
you were very famous back in those days, especially during the 80s when I was out in the streets. I was 16 years old at the time, and I keep hearing your name. Oh, this cop, Mike Lau, he's a very active cop. That's one of the reasons why I avoided going to the funeral of my Dailo, because of you. I was always trying to avoid you, and whenever I go to Chinatown, I took a lot of precautions, try to be on the lookout for you, and this way I could try to avoid you. That's how famous you were. You were like the Neil Moriello from the J Squad back in the 70s.
Well, I don't know whether it was famous or not, but
it was a good thing because you
I
kept
felt like
the gangster on the run.
Yeah, I wanted to make a difference. So I just want to mention why I became a police officer in the first place. So, we came to this country when I was 5 years old, 1971, and like many immigrants out there, family had no money. I think our uncle sponsored us over, like not a real uncle, but somebody from the same town that my parents were. And in the beginning, 5 of us lived in one bedroom. It was Avenue C, I forget the exact street, but I remember that it was one mattress and we all slept there. The bathtub was the living room with the kitchen, and you had to put like a tabletop on top of it just to serve as a table. My parents worked all the time, like all immigrant parents, I guess. And when we closed the lights, the roaches, the mice, they would all come out. And I remember like one of the games we played as kids was that we would set up chairs in the middle of the kitchen / living room / everything, and just wait for the mice and try to come out, and we would shoot them with slingshots. That was like the game. And we all slept on one mattress, and later on, a few years later, we hit the lottery. Mm-hmm. My parents got an apartment in the projects. Mm-hmm. Back then it was the Lower East Side. And so I guess back then I was maybe 11 or 12, so 6-7 years later, we graduated to the projects. Now we had several bedrooms, but it was still the projects, and back then it wasn't as gentrified as it is today. I think growing up, my dad got robbed at least 4 or 5 times, and
by the Chinese gangs?
No, by everybody except the Chinese, because back then it wasn't really Chinese that end. It was more other minorities, and so one particular time I was 12 years old, and my mom had just picked us up from a CPC after school program, and we were going into the front entrance, and there was a guy. And even back then at 12, you kind of knew, hey, this guy's a little sketchy. And my mom knew right away, and she goes, hey, we're not going into the elevator yet. We're waiting until somebody else comes into the elevator before we go in. Safety in numbers, and, and preferably not another Asian, because, she thought that they were less likely to rob a non-Asian. So we waited, I think, 10, 15 minutes, and finally a woman came in and went into the elevator. And so we followed them in. It was my mom, myself, and 2 younger brothers. And of course, this guy waited the whole time. And when before the elevator closed, he steps right in. And mom says to us in Chinese, hey, we're gonna get off on the same floor with this woman. Maybe he won't rob us. So I think it was the 11th floor. We lived on the, further up, but 11th floor, we got out with this lady. And of course, like you're holding your breath. We go out, the lady opens her door and goes in. We're waiting for the elevator door to shut. Never shuts. The lady goes in, out steps this guy. So I remember distinctly, he said something to the effect, money, money, money. And he had a knife in his hand. And my mom, she's playing it off like she doesn't understand English. And she offers the guy like an orange from the plastic bag. And the guy goes, no, money, 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 and then he points the knife at us, the kids. And at that point, my mom just takes out, I think she had like 12, I'm not even sure, what few dollars she had, and gives it to the guy. So I said, from that day on, at the age of 12, when I grow up, I'm gonna get you. You know, I didn't say it at that moment, but you know, in my mind, and I prayed to God, you know, let me get that guy when I grow up. You know, and then a couple other things happened later on, next couple years. So growing up, I always worked in Chinatown. I worked at Baskin Robbins, which was on Mott and Pell Street. Haagen-Dazs on Mott Street by Bayard Street. I worked at CPC, which was like an after-school program later on in high school, on Division Street. So every time I walked on those streets, I had to be careful because the gangs, back then, 80s, 70s, like
gang.
You guys mentioned, every street had a gang.
Had a gang. Control.
And I was a nerd, you know, but you couldn't walk a certain way, look a certain way, and you always had to worry that, you know, the gang members would, you know, try to take your money, rob you, beat you up, and
so you think
whatever.
that shaped
They shaped me growing up.
Growing up,
yeah,
to become a cop.
Yes, because even at 14, like I remember at Baskin Robbins one time, I'm like scooping ice cream, and next thing you know, you hear pop, 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 and you see one Chinese kid running from Mott Street onto Pell Street, down Pell Street, and then you see another kid running after him, and the older guy, the store manager, said, "Mike, just duck." So we duck under the counter.
What year was that?
Let's see, I was 14, so 14, 70, 79, 80.
Then it's probably Kid Size Crew.
Most likely. And then a few years after that, I got promoted because I went to work for Haagen-Dazs. They paid like, I think 50 cents more. So these guys came in, 3 guys, 1 girl, asked for a scoop of ice cream. I gave him a scoop. And I remember the kid goes, "Do you know who the fuck I am?" I want a bigger scoop. And I refused. So they said, "You know who I am?" That was said like numerous times. And basically, you know, you're a kid, you're a little scared. So they just stood outside and stood there probably like 20 minutes. "We're gonna wait until you come out and we're gonna kick your, you know, fucking ass." So back then, they, you know, 3 hours later, my shift was over. I had to go out the side entrance of David's Cookies, run around, hoping I wouldn't bump into these guys. So that was that was Ghost Shadows.
Ghost Shadows.
Then. So, you know, that was like some of the experiences. I went to Brooklyn Tech. One of my friends, Ghost Shadows, tried to recruit him, so he had to move to Boston. His family moved to Boston.
They did a lot of recruiting in Brooklyn Tech and Stuyvesant.
Yeah. Same thing. Incident happened in Brooklyn Tech. I got into a dispute with some kid, and then he knew some guys from. I think this time it was Flying Dragons, so they waited after school for me, you know. And then my friends had to tell me, "Oh, go the other way so that you don't meet up with these guys." So, like, all these experiences, I think, shaped me into saying there's got to be something better. I shouldn't be a kid, and I'm not a gangster or anything. I shouldn't be afraid. I can't walk down certain streets. I can't, you know, go certain places. And what hit me later on was like, I remember arresting one gang kid and he goes, "Why you only pick on the Chinese?" And I was a cop. And he thought that I only arrested Chinese gang members. I said, "No, you're a criminal. I don't care what you are. But the fact is, you're Asian and you only pick on Chinese. You only pick on your own. You're not extorting from the Italian grocery. You're extorting from the Chinese factory, the Chinese restaurant, and stuff like that, you know." So all those things, like, I think played a part.
Your story is very similar to mine.
Yeah. I think for a lot of us, it's like you want to make that difference. You want to like do something. I remember reading somewhere, like, everybody knows what they want. Is whether they can get what they want that they don't know. So I was so happy. It was like my dream to become a New York City police officer. Like Captain Phil Lamb that you had on another show.
Yes.
I was 20 and a half when I joined the police academy. And then I think they have to time it where when you graduate, you're 21, because you have to be 21 to carry a firearm. So I remember going for the mini-med thinking I was going in January of 86. And then I got kicked out saying, oh, we'll see you back in like 6 months. So 6 months later, I made the July of 86 class because I guess by the time I graduated, I was 21. So I joined the police department at 20 and then I retired at 44. I did 24 years.
24 years.
Yeah.
What year did you retire?
2010.
I took the exam in 89. They called me in 93. I turned it down. And then they called me again in 95. Right. And that's when I took it. I guess I wasn't mature enough. It was a different mindset.
No, you were probably mature. I wasn't mature, but I kind of knew, like I said, at the age of 12, like I wanted to do something. I didn't want to, like, I thought it was a shame. Like my parents, they worked so hard and to give up their money to some jerk.
Same thing with my mom. She got robbed. I was and I was there. I was only 4 years old, and it was so traumatizing that usually you don't remember something that happened when you're 4 years old.
Right.
But I remember.
Well, that's something. At least I was a little older, but that stayed with me my whole life.
This guy came up to her and pinned her down inside the vehicle, and back in those days, those old cars, it was like bench seat, right? So he had her lay down inside the vehicle. Probably gonna rape her, and they robbed her. But luckily, 2 undercover police officers pulled up, and the reason why was because I was so small. I was holding the headrest of the car. I was in the back seat, so I was standing up holding the headrest of the car, and I see her getting pinned down by this guy with a knife to her throat. Yeah. So I unlocked the door. I don't know why, but I just unlocked the door, and she was able, as she was laying flat, she was able to reach over and open the door. So the door swung open, and I managed to open the back door, and I ran out, and I stood in the middle of the street, and it was like really late at night. It was maybe 1, 2 in the morning, and back then they had the the Chrysler or the Fury, those boxy gray vehicle.
Yeah, it was like a box.
Yeah, I guess it's anti-crime.
Yeah.
They came screeching over and pulled right in front of
our
car.
Yeah.
And 2 undercover cops came out, and they were like scruffy looking. They looked like perps.
Right.
Came out, guns drawn. The guy fled.
Oh, they didn't catch him?
They didn't catch him. So she had to go look at photos and all that.
But it's hard.
And
right.
From that point on, like cops were like heroes to me.
Yeah.
And I grew up watching Kojak, Beretta, these cop shows.
The Wire is the most realistic cop show, though, if anybody's interested.
The
Wire? Yeah.
I never saw that.
It was on HBO.